Hello, trading is closed on April 1st, 2019. We'll go over our calls. We said that today's action would depend on whether the last 5-minute par on Friday was the real thing or a false move. We said gapping up and rallying all day on a Friday almost always continues, but if it gaps down instead, it's very negative. And I said we'd know at the open which of those two scenarios it was going to be. Now we had 4 consecutive caps up without making any progress throughout the day. It's a very negative pattern. So I thought we had a chance of having the less frequent occurrence of gapping down. But of course, by the time we opened, we gapped up, so that was off the table before the open. It's 5 days straight gapping up now, and this one is a very bullish pattern because it started out low, rallied all day long, and unless we gap down, higher prices should be in store for us. There are a few flies in the ointment that we'll discuss, but this did some pretty positive things. First of all, we had the pattern with the early high, and usually there's a late low, and usually it's a negative day unless you have a strong move early. When you rally all day like this on a day which is usually high to low, unless you gap down and hold it, it should lead to higher prices. We do have an ultimate sales target of 28.53.59. Ultimate means it'll print ultimately. Usually you don't have to wait long, but whether it prints now or prints a year from now, it doesn't make a difference. We'll just make a note of it. Tomorrow's pattern has the early high. Well, we got an ultimate sell signal here. That hasn't been satisfied. If you wait long enough, it's about one failed signal every 2 or 3 years. We get about 150 a year. So ultimately, I'm confident there's a good chance it'll print. Later on, we got an ultimate buy signal here. MEJT said it was false and prices would retrace to this area. And you'll notice even though we got the signal here, it didn't pay off until 2 hours after the signal was given, which is a characteristic of the system. You set targets, and the targets typically are of much use not when they're given, but later on. We've now completed the 3-leg Fed whipsaw because this was higher than our previous high. The middle leg didn't go down as much as it usually does. This was our old count. There's a rule that when you break it like this, you have to go past it by a tick. So unless we gap down, this invalidates the count. And we're going to, actually, this was my old count. I did that backwards. This was my old count. And we're going to probably have to go back to this one. But even that's not a very clear count, how you count this wave up. I'll show you a different count in just a minute. Now I have 2 totally different systems which have resistance at this time and at this price, but after a move like this, I don't think they're going to work. Let me show you some other stuff. Here's the Bollinger Bands on the NASDAQ McClellan Oscillator. It went under the band and went up at the March low. It's now near the high. If you go over it and under it, it gives a sell. It hasn't happened yet, but you're in the area where it certainly could happen. Here was the signal right at the bottom around Christmas. You'll see when it hits the upper band, this is a sign of a potential change in trend. The real question is how much higher are we going to go? Well, we still do have some resistance here. But when you've broken through some pretty significant areas, I don't think we have to stop here. There's nothing stopping us actually from hitting new highs and having this being an expanded flat. If we do stop here, I'm not saying we will, the only explanation would be we're still in wave blue B, that's A of B, and then you've making an A with an ABC. It looks like this. You've corrected 50% of this first wave, and right now you have a wave down. Then this green one shows you this would be an A, that would be a B, and the 127.2% would be a C. So this would be like your A, B, C. Then you could have, that would be B, and then you could have a C down. I really think that's pretty far-fetched at this point, but if we start dropping, that's the explanation. But all we have to do to get higher prices really is not to invalidate today's rally, and that requires going over today's close by a tick. When you have the negative pattern we had the last few days of gapping up and not making any progress 4 days in a row, when you break up anyway, unless you invalidate this promptly by gapping down, usually the invalidation has legs and you invalidate it in grand style. So absent a gap down, I think we'll see higher prices. And here's a target, and I'm just going to say that's the target. And if it prints tomorrow, fine, but it doesn't have to print tomorrow to satisfy anything. And that's today's call.